I'm your host, Grayson Brulte. Welcome to another episode of SAE Tomorrow Today, a show about emerging technology and trends of mobility with leaders and innovators to make it all happen. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to be joined by the European Commission's Joint Research Centers Espedito Rusciano and Akos Kristen. On today's episode, we'll explore how the EU is approaching regulating autonomous vehicles, including testing, validation, safety, and global collaboration. We hope you enjoy this episode. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, and also welcome to the audience.
Thank you also from my side, and welcome to everyone.
It's really great to have you gentlemen here because you're doing a lot of important work and a lot of work that is a lot of heavy lifting of what you're doing in the EU. Espedito, I'd love to kick it off with this. How is the EU approaching semi-autonomous driving, so SAE Level 2, and eventually how is that going to change as you move to full autonomous, known as SAE Level 4, from a regulatory perspective?
Yeah, I would say, Grayson, that Europe is approaching, this technology, semi-autonomous vehicle, as also, full autonomous vehicle, in a sort of stepwise approach. What I mean with that, let me start with an example. Basically, what we are trying to do is to balance the innovation from one side with the safety and other societal aspect. For doing that, we made different steps. The first step that I would like to emphasize is the European Regulation 2019 of the 2019-2144, that is the General Safety Regulation, for which Europe is already requiring some assisted system, like the emergency braking. But this regulation is important also for another aspect, because it created the legal basis for fully automated vehicle, what you were mentioning as a level 4 system. In fact, from the 2022, we have in Europe the first worldwide regulation for the approval of such system. So for fully automated system, level 4 system, even though I have to mention that there are some limitations, because this regulation is only covering 3 use cases, what we can call automated valet parking system, so system that allow autonomously to park, hub to hub, so autonomous system that will move from point A to point B in a fixed route, basically, and then robotaxi, so autonomous system that can operate in a predefined area. And the second important aspect to mention regarding this regulation is that has some limitation. The most important limitation is about, the small series. Manufacturer that get an approval can only produce in small series, so up to 1,500 vehicles per year. This is one limitation. In addition to that, there are 2 aspects that I would like to mention briefly. One is that Europe is also working at the international level, UN level, United Nations level, in order to ensure an harmonized approach on this system. And this is why Europe made a good contribution for the drafting of the regulation, a sort of level 3 system, let me call, that is automated lane keeping system, and also for level 2 system, what we call DCAS, driver control assisted system. And now we are working together. Together means worldwide, with the contracting parties, with the countries that apply the same certification regime that have approval, but also with the self-certification countries like US, in order to have one single regulation, or at least I would say an harmonized regulation for automated driving systems, so level 3 and level 4. And this is what we aim to achieve by 2026, the mid of 2026, to have this regulation that will be worldwide applicable and will allow also fair competition. The last point to mention is that Europe, even though at the European level, as European Commission, we do not have the mandate, we are trying also to support the member state for the deployment. So in particular to cover the national legislation like liability or like, I will say, testing and also traffic rules in order to ensure an harmonized approach among the member states that will ensure the scaling up of such technology. I hope that this answered to your question. I was a bit long, but I hope that I provided information that you were asking. Thanks.
No, it was fantastic. And you mentioned parking, and if we see a lot of the auto manufacturers in Germany, the tier 1 suppliers in Germany over the years have put out public videos of demonstrating automated parking and developing that technology in the member state, Germany. What input do the private sector, the companies developing this technology, developing the driving systems, What input have they shared with you in the Joint Research Center as you're working to develop these regulations?
We are quite proud of this, let's say, trinity of working together, or the regulators, manufacturers, and member states, and of course the European Commission Joint Research Center. Maybe just a brief introduction of our institution. So the Joint Research Center is part of the European Commission, so it's, let's say, part of the government. But we don't have any policy making agenda. We are independent of any commercial or international or national interest. But we do pre-normative research. I can explain it a little bit later, but also through this pre-normative research, the ingenuity to support policy. So we try to apply innovative approaches, try to understand the scientific and technical background and foundations of these technologies, and trying to give, let's say, a harmonized and technology agnostic, repeatable and reproducible testing procedures, and then how we support policy making. So we are not, let's say, even though in our title there is also official and manager and whatever, but we are still scientists and engineers operating labs, performing tests and evaluating data. Big data is also sometimes. And so to go back to the original question, how this regulation or how this development is working. So one side, we have European legislations, and it can be easier, even though we are just 27 member states in that sense, but still it can be challenging to harmonize all the different aspects and interests of the member states. But that's why I mentioned we are scientists and engineers. So I strongly believe, and it's a good experience as well, that based on facts and based on evidences and based on research data, so hard data, not just like concepts, but hard measurement data, I think we have a better chance to find common grounds and to find a good, minimum safety level or minimum safety requirements which can fulfill both innovation, as Perito mentioned before, and also to protect citizens and other interests on the roads.
While you're mainly scientists and engineers, I'm sure that we'll get into this later, but you do vehicle teardowns. Do you have a policy team that studies regulations from the UK, the US, China, to kind of learn from where the world is going from a policy standpoint as you look to make recommendations on these policies?
Yes. I mean, I would not call it policy team, but we also work together at United Nations level with US counterparts, Canadians, so also Chinese and Japanese colleagues on new regulations. But also we have sometimes direct collaboration with, for example, with NHTSA, with other contracting parties. For example, that's why not necessarily because of NHTSA, but we also visiting other countries, other countries like the United States, and trying to perform tests with the vehicles on the market in other markets as well.
If I may, Grayson, just to add and to complement what Akos was mentioning, at UN level, basically we interact with different stakeholders coming from all around the world. And this interaction will help also to share information about, what they are doing, what they are developing, and we do basically the same. I was mentioning in the first question that you asked me that now we are trying to develop really one single regulation that try to take, the advantage of the different approach that we see in US with self-certification and also in Europe and the UK with the TEP approval. So we are aware about what is happening in the different countries, but we think that we can work together, maybe to achieve a best result, in some way also to try to merge, the different approach that we see in the different countries.
What hurdles do you have to overcome to ensure that autonomous vehicles can scale? Because you have member states, and when you go, say you're going from France into Germany, or you're going from Italy into Switzerland, what has to be done to ensure those vehicles can then go over the borders with in the same, if you want to call it, level playing field regulatory wise?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think in some way I already mentioned a few aspects. Let me start with the regulatory aspect. I mentioned that in Europe we have one single regulation that will allow the TEP approval. of automated driving system, level 4 system, but still, we need to work more in order to scaling up, because this regulation, as already mentioned, is only allowing small series production. The first step that Europe is already taking is to extend to large series. And this is a process that will allow the extension to large series for AVP by this year, and to the other two use cases that I mentioned by next year. But this is just one step. I think you were also mentioning member state. We are aware that in order to ensure not only the entrance to the market, so the possibility to the manufacturer to sell the vehicle, but also to use on the road the vehicles, the second step is what we call the deployment. For the deployment, there is a need of adapting national rules. And this can be, a barrier in Europe for the scaling up of this technology. For doing that, Akos, I think, with Akos we discuss a lot on this aspect. But one of the aspects that the European Union is trying to do, also with the action plan that Europe drafted and published, in March, if I do remember correctly, was also to have large-scale deployment, cross-border deployment, in order to have first, I will say, really pilot in which we can have and we can experience what is needed for the deployment. And also we can came up with what is called, regulatory sandbox. It means that we can have harmonized, basically, rule in different countries. This will be a way to ensure an harmonization among the different countries and ensure what you were mentioning, a level playing field. In Europe, in some way, this is already done for the type approval, because if you type approve a vehicle with one type approval, this is mutually recognized among all the Europe. But then for the deployment, we need to work on harmonization of the deployment rule, of the national rules. And this is another matter. And the European Commission is trying to help in some way, try to coordinate and try to facilitate the role and the task of the different countries, member states.
Akos, I want to go back to the scientific engineering aspect of this. What type of testing and validation has to occur before you allow the vehicles to go on public roads? And I'm asking that from two perspectives. One, from a ADAS, an SAE level 2 system, and then also from an SAE level 4 system. What does that look like from a testing and validation perspective?
I think now all the vehicle components are getting more and more complex, and ADAS and ADS is an excellent examples. They are, so complex that even the creators don't understand how it is working. But yeah, so we needed to create some innovative regulatory process, and this is what we call open regulatory framework. And this open regulatory framework has 4 pillars. One of them is an audit, including process and the product audit, but maybe Expedito will talk more about it. And then it has 2 very serious steps. One of them is testing on proving grounds, so testing critical scenarios, edge cases, corner cases, whatever it is. And the third pillar is the public road testing. So let's say on normal roads and then with a complex traffic situation. And the 4th pillar is, call it in-service monitoring and reporting. It is very similar to the standard operating procedure implemented by the NHTSA in a few years ago for ADAS and ADS vehicles. So basically, we recognize that those systems which are very complex does not necessarily have one single worst case scenario. So we cannot apply the same testing rules we applied, for example, for crash tests. So let's say this is a kind of point test. So if we have a worst case, yes, we can do one single test and then we can ensure that the system works well. But for ADS and ADAS vehicle, we don't have a worst case. Everything is worst case, which was not tested, not trained. So every system has different edge cases, and this edge case is the critical part of every system. So that's why we worked this new innovative approach to type approve this kind of complex systems. But if you want to go back to the very technicality, I think the testing is done as a regular equipment, let's say targets, foam targets, vehicle targets, pedestrian targets, trying to set up different scenarios, also including the driver monitoring systems. And so measuring performance of safety performance of the system, so not in a static way, but in a dynamic way.
I think one aspect of this approach that we call also multi-pillar approach is also the use of the virtual testing. I think it's important to mention the virtual testing because in particular, when you move to automated driving system, you will have countless of scenario or situation that you need to test. It will be impossible to do just with real testing. So it will be important and critical, the virtual testing, so the simulation, and also to demonstrate that the simulation will be credible, will provide, credible result. This is one aspect I think is important really to mention. The second aspect, I think Akos was mentioning, the in-service monitoring. The in-service monitoring maybe is important because it will allow to monitor the performance over the time and see whether the system maybe is behaving as expected, and also to evaluate, in advance whether, maybe there are misbehavior or drifting of the behavior. And this will allow to intervene in advance before any accident will happen. I think this is really a benefit of having this additional element. The last thing that I think is important to mention, even though is maybe a bit less technical, not covering the vehicles, but in this way to assess, new validation way to assess, the first step is assessing the capability of the manufacturer to do a proper management of the safety over the life cycle. So we first check the manufacturer capability, and then we move to the vehicles. I think this is basically the kind of approach that we are using. Manufacturer and then moving to the vehicles. But I think it was just to complement, the approach that in particular is what we are going, and I think the entire worldwide applicable will be this multi-pillar approach. It's important to mention that these are, all the pillars that we are going to use. And sorry if I jumped, on the discussion, but I think it was important.
I'd like that because you gave me, I wanted to go with Akos this certain direction around edge cases, but now you gave me more interesting data points to go back to him. So Akos, Europe is diverse. You have rural environments, you have villages, you have two-way roads that go to one-way roads if you're going over some villages in a village, and a lot of complexities in the European landscape that you do not necessarily have in America. So to me, it opens up, I'm going to use the word potential here, for more edge cases. How do you test and validate for those? Is that what Espadado said? Is that using simulation, or how do you test for those unique edge cases?
Yeah, let's maybe separate the ADS or level 2+ systems and from the ADS. And as Espadito mentioned, that I think for ADS, the virtual simulation is a very critical part of the overall type approval process. For ADAS system, we also use the same multi-pillar approach, but with the testing, we mostly test the capability of the system. Also, this new regulatory framework does not contain or does not have any fixed testing point, so that you need to test at 40 km/h or at this overlap or etc. etc. But or we don't require that for instance the vehicle should have 300-meter detection range or something like this. But we try to set up a certain scenario where the vehicle capability is really does matter, and we can check if the vehicle has the capability. And then the most of the cases are done by the virtual testing and public road testing. Now this is also very good questions because in theory, if you test in one country, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have the same, let's say, infrastructure readiness or quality of the infrastructure in another country. So this is still ongoing, this discussion. But as Pedito is also mentioned that this countless scenarios can be only tested by virtual testing and the audit process.
Every time I'm in the EU, if you want to say I'm lucky, I think I'm lucky, I end up finding test vehicles. I don't know if I look for them, but I just happen to see them. And I've noticed they're clearly identified. There's the camera on the back and that little thing, and then sometimes on the side. And it's very clearly identified. Is that part of the regulatory where the vehicles have to be identifiable with those different markings that are on the sides of the vehicles?
Yeah, I think because of we have this GDPR, the data protection regulations, then we need to identify all this that we are currently testing. Yes, indeed. So this is a kind of best practice to avoid any further problems.
Espadito, the EU is shifting from compliance-based regulation to performance-based regulation for L3 and L4 systems. Why? What's driving that? What's behind that?
Yeah, let me say this is part of what Akos mentioned as I think we also mentioned as an open regulatory framework. Basically, let me make first an explanation about what means compliance-based. Basically, the traditional approach is mainly compliance-based. We have, a prescriptive requirement, a sort of checklist, pass-fail criteria, and this is basically what a system or a vehicle must be able to comply with. In some way, this kind of approach, I will say, is not able to anticipate any kind of future design, can be even design prescriptive. While moving to the performance-based regulation, this kind of regulation will mainly set safety and functional performance objective. So they will define the safety goal instead of saying how this safety goal will be achieved. And why? It's important to move to this, because when we move to innovation, we talk about, automated vehicles. There are different ways the automated vehicle, and different use cases that we need to take into account. Developing a regulation for all the use cases will be basically impossible and will stop or will slow down the innovation. This is why Europe, but I would say not only Europe, is moving to performance-based regulation. So basically, in few words, I will say that performance-based regulation will boost in some way the innovation, but preserving the safety. This is basically the reason why we are moving to this approach. And another aspect is that this approach is technological neutral, and is what we aim for.
Is safety the North Star for the regulations and the way that they're being developed?
You mean that the safety is utmost critical in Europe? So we are very proud of that. Still, the fatality rate and the incident rate is falling in the EU, even though it's slowing down. I just had a news a few weeks ago or a week ago that in Finland there was no fatal accident in Helsinki in the last years or something like this. So it's really good, and so we really like to keep this trend and So we also try to avoid to use our citizens as a test driver even without their consent, and then that's why we try to we allow only those systems on the market which has a certain minimum safety criteria or minimum safety performance, which can provide enough protection for the citizens and the road users.
Grayson, may just add one point about the safety, because I think it's important to mention it's going also beyond Europe, but I think it's important to mention when we talk about automated driving system, that then we set a specific safety goal, that the ADS should be safer than what we call a competent, careful human driver. So we basically use as a benchmark, the human driver, and we want that the automation will be better. And this is not, a goal just for Europe. It's a goal worldwide, because something that is recognized, also by Japan, by US, Canada, and so on. I think this is an important aspect to mention. Safety is important worldwide.
I want to stay on that. I 100% agree safety is important, and it is a worldwide issue. As the vehicles have higher levels of automation, where does education come into the picture? Where the driver, because you still have to pay attention, even though the vehicle is doing some of the driving functions, where does the education come in so they actually know the true capabilities of the system, of what it can, and most importantly, what it cannot do? Where does education come into that picture?
Maybe we should also split this question to ADS and ADAS or L2 systems, because in a best case, in L4 system, there may be no driver. And then there is no, in that case, education of the driver at least. But especially we come to this very important part of the remote control. But let's go step by step. For level 2 system, I think we should be very clear. This is an assistance system. The driver should be in the loop all the time. We believe that we should give the driver certain assistance which help the driver to perform the maneuver, but also to help to preserve its attentiveness and to preserve its risk balancing. So therefore, the education, I would say, has two parts. First, no misinterpretation or no misinformation about the system capabilities from marketing or other sources. And this is also, even though we cannot regulate it, but it was a big concern of many contracting parties. And the second one is a very good HMI system, or let's say how the system communicates with the driver during driving. In my point of view, as automated or assisted driving is more similar to a normal driving, then it is better. So, if you don't need to do any other task, then it's better. So it also should come with a certain natural experience from the previous driving experiences. But we have seen that drivers can adapt to certain level of automation and a good HMI, and this should be emphasized. Not should be. It is also regulated or given some emphasis in the regulation as well.
I will say, if I can add, that the human is part, and the interaction between the human and the machine is part of the safety validation. So, we need to ensure that there is a proper safety, a proper and a safe interaction between the human and the machine. Agos was mentioning the level 2, but if we move also to level 3, in which, according to the SAE level, in which the user or the driver can play the role of the fallback, it's really important to understand, how to take back the control. All these kind of aspects are really important. And understanding how the system works and what are the limitations, I think, Grayson, you were mentioning, is critical. And this is what we call, that the user, the driver, must have a clear mental model about how the system works. Knowing the limitation of the system, the capacity of the system, is really critical to avoid the over-reliance of the system and to avoid any kind of misuse of the system. And probably, I think this will also be important then that in the future we need to think also in a different way about the driver education and also the licensing, for the driver, maybe also to take into consideration this interaction between the human and the assisted system. But it's just, a personal opinion.
From in education, obviously, I'm assuming, is the licensing done? Is that done at the member state level, or is that done at the EU level?
Yeah, member state. And just to mention education, I think we also this education should also cover, let's say police and other actors, because there is a very interesting question that, there are some systems which allows you to drive hands off, but they are not as 3 systems, but L2 systems. So when the police looks into your vehicle and it sees you that you are driving without the hand, then what should he do? Should he check what level of mode it drives, or should stop you, or what? So this we also probably other aspects of some resistance from the member states and some parties to slow down the process a little bit, or let's say be calm and let's think through every aspect of this system.
And maybe, if I may, there is even another aspect that you were mentioning, the teleoperation. I think even for level 4, the human will contribute in some way to facilitate the operation. And then maybe we'll have remote operator. Also, remote operator need to have the proper education to not maybe create a new risk that we are not considering, also for level 4. Even though the system should be able to achieve the safety by itself, but still an operator will be there to facilitate the operation, not for the safety, but then should not introduce new risk with a bad education.
If I take what you two gentlemen just said and I package it together, you've got a political can of worms with a lot of competing interests to go this way, to go this way, to go that way. How do you bring everybody together to say, okay, politics aside, this technology has to scale on the continent? How do you bring everybody together to have those meaningful conversations without saying, I need this, and you have all the horse trading? How do you do that?
I think it's from our perspective, it's very simple. Bring data to the table. If you bring data to the table and evidence, then the process can be, let's say, lubricated enough. Of course, if somebody doesn't want to do and doesn't want to accept anything, then yeah, you cannot do anything. But my experience that anytime when data and evidences came to the table, we could find an agreement or compromise and understood at least each other's opinion, why he and she wants this and that.
But this is actually the role of the GRC. This is why, we are there to support, also the Commission, to do research and to have basically data-driven policy, I would say.
The JRC, you've done research on driver monitoring systems and human behavior. What did you learn? I'm curious. What did you learn in that research?
Yeah, do you have another day to discuss this? Probably just to really just the essence. It's a kind of chicken and egg problem for us, because we cannot really study how human behaves if we don't have system on the road. But we cannot put anything on the road if we don't have data to which shows that it can be done in a safe way. So we cannot have a very big scale or big data and population testing before we can put this on the road. But what we try to dig into is really how this technology influences the driving behavior at micro scale. Let's put it this way. I must say that we are still in the learning process, and we learned. And also, I was one of the test driver, went through several testing campaigns using eye tracking glass and putting myself or ourselves into different situations. And I must say that I'm very surprised that even during manual driving, how much we rely or over-rely our own memory or own working memory. So whatever we expect that happens, then we don't necessarily check anymore that directions. For example, during the lane change in a multi-lane road, okay, I checked once and there is nobody in my target lane or something, but is it still true during the execution of the lane change? And because in manual driving, we don't necessarily have the time to look around, even though drivers want to look in a proper time or more time to the mirror or to the side window or to check if there is an adjacent lane change or something. But we cannot do it because we need to keep the headway distance, we need to keep the lane marking and so on and so on. So in some way, automation or even partial automation can help because it allows us more time. But on the same time, it also changes how we scan our environment. So for example, one of the things we learned is that the preparation phase many times is totally missing because maneuvers happening according to the system's will. So we cannot see into the electrons and understand when it will happen. But during the execution, the drivers looked more carefully in many other directions. First, because they had the chance, not because the headway distance was kept and any other things was under control. But on the other hand, if the pace of the system is different than the self pace of the human perception, then can be an uncomfortable situation, even unsafe situation. So let's say there are some positive safety balance, I would say, for the automation. But on the other hand, it is also true that drivers can get into non-driving related tasks more frequently if their brain is not occupied enough. So this is something we need to take into account, but that's why we have the driver monitoring system in place. And we found a quite broad, warning strategies around the world. So we try to make a certain common denominator, which is safe enough, but still, doesn't disturb the driver after every 2 seconds or every 3 seconds, even if it is just looking to the mirror or something like that. So that is what we are still learning. So I won't say that this learning process is finished, but we have seen some positive aspects of automation on human behavior. If you don't take into account that probably systems with a proper safety culture, manufacturer with a proper safety culture will perform the maneuver in a much more calm, much more predictable way than some humans, for sure. Even using the indicators, which is also not necessarily the common thing that people do on the road. So in that case, it has some positive aspects, but of course we need to compensate the possible negative aspects with the driver monitoring system. Maybe one more thing I just like to add is that we also realize that driver monitoring system is not per se an active safety system. So a driver monitoring system won't protect you from unexpected event. the system needs to be much better than a common ACC and ARK or LKS or lane keeping system, which is very widespread currently on the road. So the regulation also set a higher safety limit for system quality and system performance regarding performing the lateral and longitudinal control.
Espedito, looking down the road, say 5 years, 10 years, what does it look like from an ADAS and level 4 regulatory perspective? Do we have a unified regulations inside of the EU? And do you see these technologies scaling safely?
Yeah, I will say in particular, if you look to the level 4 system, that even before, 5 years, we will have a unified regulation for level 3 and level 4 system. And when I mean unified, I would like to be optimistic. It's not just, at EU level, but it will be worldwide level. Because I'm pretty confident that activities that we are doing now at UN level will lead by next year to have a regulation that will be basic, or at least a requirement that will be worldwide applicable. And this is what we for sure have. But looking to 5 or 10 years, I think that based on the activities that we would like to do with this large-scale deployment and cross-border deployment, we will have evidence that will allow to have an harmonized approach regarding the deployment rules. So my expectation is that by the next 5-10 years, we will have harmonization also for the deployment rule. And this is the critical factor to allow the scaling up of this technology in Europe. And I'm confident that activities that we are doing will go and will help to go in this direction. The last point, I think that thanks to the experience that now we are gaining also through the experiment that we are doing, we will be able to give more certainty on the safety validation approach, because now we have a framework, but I will say this framework needs to be really applied. And then we will have much more, information and also methodology to ensure at the end that the system will be safe. So we will have maybe in the future safety metrics that can help to understand how the system works. And this is something that I'm sure that we will be able to achieve in the next years. The last point that I think is critical, I think Europe will be able to create what I think we can call a sort of a continuous oversight model. We'll be able to establish a way to have a strong monitoring system and also exchange of information among the different countries that will also help to enhance the trust on such system. And this is at least my expectation.
Gentlemen, this has been an insightful, fascinating conversation. As we look to wrap this up, what would you like the listeners to take away with them? Akos, we'll start with you, please.
Yeah, because I'm mostly responsible for L2 systems, I would really like to emphasize that they are still assistance systems. So all the driver needs to be in the loop and take the highest attention. And maybe the time and mental load gain what you can have from release from the automation system, you can put it in evaluating the overall situation and try to avoid earlier a critical situation which can develop quite quickly. So be careful on the road. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to say that Europe is working in order to ensure that and facilitate the innovation, but at the same time to preserve the safety. For doing that, I would say that we are creating a framework that is flexible enough for the innovation, at the same time is firm enough to ensure the safety. Because at the end, I think what is important to say, this is not just about the vehicle and the technology, it's also about, us, how we use basically the vehicle and how we share basically the road. So I think this is what to take in consideration, not just about the vehicle, but also about, us, the society.
Yeah, my key takeaway from today is you have to understand the limitations and the capabilities of the vehicle. And as you gentlemen clearly said, that goes back to data in research. Today is tomorrow, tomorrow is today, the future is data in research. Akos Espedito, thank you so much for coming on SAE Tomorrow Today.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you so much.
Be sure to join us next week as we take a deep dive into the complexity of vehicle missions with co-authors of the groundbreaking new book, Critical Mass, the one thing you need to know about green cars.
SAE International makes no representations as to the accuracy of the information presented in this podcast. The information and opinions are for general information only. SAE International does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast.